Set all this up, and then finally he gets the word from Jeffrey Katzenberg in Las Vegas, who before had been sort of the hero of fundraising, who had raised all of this money for Joe Biden, just telling the president the spigots run dry. Donors are not giving money anymore, Mr. President. We can't get donors to give money. You then hear about not infighting inside the Biden campaign, but just a sadness, an understanding that they cannot win with a man that they respect and love. And they're basically waiting for orders. Who are they going to help beat Donald Trump? And so all of that happened yesterday, along with so much more.
Yeah, and then at the end of the day, we learned that the President of the United States has tested positive for COVID, which felt like a coda to the day you just laid out, where Democrats just went, how much more of this can we take? And I think what we saw yesterday was everything we've been hearing in private, not just, frankly, for the last 3 weeks, but for a long time, spilled out publicly, which is that the polling now shows, private polling and now public polling that we're seeing, internal polling and public polling, that this is an uphill climb, not just for the president, but for everybody down the ballot. And that's why you heard Adam Schiff, who's very likely to be a senator from the state of California coming up here in just a few months, starting the day with a public statement saying that Joe Biden should step aside, that he's going to take down with him others who hope to become senators, hope to hold on to their seats in the House, for example. And then this sort of, the dam broke, and we heard the reports of Chuck Schumer, as you said, and Nancy Pelosi and Hakeem Jeffries. And it went on like this all day, saying, we've looked at the data. Yes, we've seen the national polls, but the election is not a national referendum. We're looking now at our district polls. We're looking at state polls, including one this morning from Emerson that shows Donald Trump now leading in the state of Virginia by 3 points. In Virginia. So that's a snapshot of where this race is right now. And that's why you're hearing more vocally Democrats saying it is time to get out. And I wonder, Mike Barnicle, what you think about the president's state of mind right now. Obviously, we saw him after the COVID diagnosis, looking frail, getting onto Air Force One last night. He respects Nancy Pelosi. He respects Chuck Schumer. We know that. What will this weekend of isolation at home in Delaware be like for Biden and his family?
I think it'll be a reflective weekend for the family, taking a look at the reality of the landscape. And I think the sadness of it will finally penetrate the entire Biden family. And the sadness of it, by sadness, I mean when you have elected officials, many of them unnamed in these newspapers, stories about Democrats indicating that they don't want Joe Biden to be on the ballot this fall, running for re-election as president. The sadness of it is you keep hearing the word that they're bitter. They are bitter. And the idea that Joseph R. Biden, who is a magnetic personality with people, loves to grab people, slap them on the shoulder, how are you, buddy, how you been, that he would be referred to as bitter is really something. It's really something. And that Jonathan, is, I think, epidemic now within the House candidates and some of the Senate candidates.
Yeah, we're seeing another real push by Democrats to try to adjust the top of the ticket. Every time the Biden campaign since the debate has been out there, they've been trying to fend this off. He's done a number of interviews. He's done a number of campaign events, some of which were very well received. He has been out there publicly saying, I'm saying this, stop asking me. And the questions have only grown. The Biden team's efforts to push this aside simply haven't worked. And as Joe just ran through, yesterday felt like a really significant day. And we should note, the Schumer meeting was over the weekend. Pelosi was several days ago. Jeffries was several days ago. But what was not coincidental is they all leaked yesterday. Yeah. And I think that there is a sense that this is the time. The Democrats see this as their final moment, as a contrast to what we're seeing at the RNC, where, like it or not, the Republicans are totally unified around Donald Trump. They've embraced his running mate. We're going to hear from Trump tonight. There's confidence there. And they're also expected to put up a record fundraising total in the wake of the assassination attempt. You contrast that with the Democrats, their own fundraising drying up, and this sense of doom that's permeated the party. And maybe that's not fair to President Biden, but that's where the party is right now. And it does feel like, as the president now heads home to Rehoboth, off the campaign trail, and what would be a crucial moment to provide counter-programming to the RNC, that if this is going to happen, It's going to happen in this next stretch. And again, publicly, the president's saying he's staying on. We'll have to see if that changes.
Yeah, and Joe and Mika, Joe, you pointed to this AP poll. The argument from the campaign has been it's elites, it's the media trying to push Joe Biden out. What we've said all along over the last 3 weeks is that's just not the case. All you have to do is go to the grocery store or go to the dry cleaner or the gas station. It's what people are talking about, his age after that. And frankly, there were a lot of people rooting for Joe Biden in these last 3 weeks, waiting for these interviews, watching the performances, and clearly not assured when you see that 65% of Democrats, not just Americans, of Democrats believe it's time for him to step out of the race.
Right. And you can look at all the polls. Listen, here's the deal. There's 110 days left. We've said this time and time again. We've seen polls. Anybody that remembers 1980 remembers that on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday before the election, the race was too close to call. And suddenly there was a massive break toward Ronald Reagan the final weekend. Reagan wins a massive landslide in 1980 over Jimmy Carter. You can go to 1988. There's Michael Dukakis. He's up by 15, 16, 17 points in this summer. George H.W. Bush mocked, ridiculed. This race is over. Democrats were saying it, completely confident George H.W. Bush wins in a landslide. We remember here in 2016 being mocked and ridiculed for even saying in late October, early November, that Donald Trump had a pathway to 270 electoral votes. Everybody likes to say, oh, we knew he's... No, they didn't. Nobody was saying it. The very few people who were saying it were being mocked and ridiculed. That was in 2016. So, yes, a week in politics. I think Macmillan may have said it, maybe Harold Wilson. One of those British prime ministers from the 1960s said it, that in politics, a week is a lifetime. And you got 110 days. So many things can happen. So many things will happen. That said, show me any candidate from any year running for any position where he gets to the general election and 2/3 of his own party do not want him to run. I don't care if it's Joe Biden in 2024, if it's Joe Scarborough in like 1996, if it's a mayor running in 2014, that candidate is going to lose. Those are numbers you just can't get past me.
Well, given what you've just said, Joe, this goes back to the point that you made a week ago, perhaps more, and that the Dems need to get it together. They really need to get whatever they've got going. Whatever it is, the problem should not be our candidate. The focus should be on Donald Trump. You know, it may or may not be Joe Biden. I trust Joe Biden's abilities. I also trust Nancy Pelosi's political acumen. Nobody knows politics more than her, and nobody more than Nancy Pelosi. She does not get out there without information to back it up. She doesn't take risks, and she knows her politics. She knows her numbers.
She doesn't lose votes. You remember... Whenever Nancy Pelosi, people say, well, is this going to pass or not? We would always say when Nancy was Speaker, we'd say, well, if she puts it on the floor, it's going to pass because she knows where the votes are better than anybody I've ever seen.
If there is a change, it's got to be a change that gets Barack Obama behind the candidate, Michelle Obama behind the candidate, George W. Bush behind the candidate, former presidents and world leaders and people who understand the importance of democracy, because it's going to take citizens who care about this country to bring this back together, or Trump will win. Trump right now is on the path to winning.
Yes, he is. Let's go to NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles. Ryan, what a day yesterday on the Hill. I'd ask, what did you hear? I guess I should ask, how much did you hear of what we just talked about? Where to begin?
Yeah, you know, Joe and Mika, I think you guys have crystallized it really well. The issue here is that rank-and-file Democrats have just not felt comfortable about President Biden at the top of the ticket since that debate took place. I think part of the reason that you saw the calls and the angst subside a little bit was because of that assassination attempt on former President Trump. It just kind of pushed this story to the back burner. But I can tell you from my own reporting that the conversations were still ongoing and that people were still very nervous. In fact, right before the assassination attempt was this phone call that President Biden had with the New Dem coalition. More than 100 rank-and-file Democrats, mostly moderate to left Democrats, which was a very uncomfortable phone call. It was supposed to last an hour. It only lasted 35 minutes. President Biden could not be heard very well by people on the call. He got defensive at one point during an interaction with Congressman Jason Crow of Colorado. And I know that many of these Democrats got off that call feeling a lot worse about the situation than they had going in, and they already didn't feel good about it. So I think that is kind of the foundation of what you see in this maybe third or fourth round of angst and concern from Democratic leaders about President Biden's role in this campaign. And what is interesting is that Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, they had been very quiet about their own personal feelings about the situation. And to be clear, they're still being very quiet. But what they're allowing to let happen right now are the rumors and the speculation about what went on in these closed-door conversations between Schumer, Pelosi, and Jeffries and the president. And they are not going to great pains at all to deny the conversation and the tone of those conversations. And what I was told is that the conversation between Schumer and Biden on Saturday was blunt, that Schumer laid out for President Biden in detail the polling that he is showing about these races, not just at the national level, but in individual states and in individual districts. And that it was a conversation just between Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer. And what is interesting about this conversation is that there's been a concern among many rank-and-file Democrats that perhaps the message wasn't getting directly to Joe Biden, that he was being insulated by some of his closest associates and family members, and that he wasn't getting a real reality check as to how his party was feeling and how average voters were feeling. Well, now we know that he's had these direct conversations. We know he talked directly with Hakeem Jeffries, and Jeffries has said on the record that he conveyed the feelings of his caucus, and we know that his caucus is upset. The still lingering question that hangs above all of this is that there is only one person who can decide that Joe Biden is no longer going to be in this race, and that is Joe Biden himself. There are now reports that he's at least open to that idea, something that was not even leaked out early on after the debate, that was something that he wasn't even considering. So if that door is open even a crack, my guess is that at least congressional Democrats are eager to bust it wide open and try and convince him to find a path to exit this race gracefully. And then the conversation can be who comes next, which I think is still a very open conversation within the Democratic Party.
Mika, the sobering message he got yesterday from congressional leaders and his biggest fundraiser was simple. We're losing, you're losing, and you're going to run out of money because the donors have left. So I don't know what those two or three in his inner circle are going to say to that. But the fact is they don't know more than Nancy Pelosi about polling. They don't know more about contributors than Jeffrey Katzenberg, who's dedicated a good chunk of, the last decade to helping elect Joe Biden. And when you hear from congressional losers, we're losing. Yeah. You're losing. Leaders. Yeah. And the donors have all abandoned you. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really matter what people are saying on the inside.
Like I said last hour, I believe deeply in President Joe Biden's ability to run this country. Yep. I also trust more than anybody I've ever met in politics, Nancy Pelosi's political acumen. So when she speaks, I listen, and I think a lot of other people do. Well,
Democrats certainly do on the Hill.
Let's bring in NBC News and MSNBC political analyst and former U.S. Senator Claire McCaskill. Claire, your thoughts this morning as the president works to recover from COVID and the RNC is confidently underway.
Yeah, this is a tough time for the Democratic Party for a lot of reasons. But if you look at the narrative of what's happened, I think, and I look at this, folks, from a perspective of somebody who might be running for Senate in a tough state. Because that's what Chuck Schumer is focused on. Hakeem Jeffries is focused on congressional candidates running in swing districts. That's what delivers majorities for the policies that we care about, for the values that we all share. And they watched the debate, realized that the age issue had now become something that was very, very big. And immediately afterwards, those candidates and those elected leaders of our party thought, well, let's give Joe Biden space and grace because, you know, this was a horrible night for him, and everyone felt for him personally about how difficult that night had to have been for him and his family. And the other thing that happened is everyone waited a week to 10 days to poll. I think you can assume that every single battleground state where we have a Senate election waited 7 to 10 days and then went in the field. And they asked questions like, would it impact your vote if the U.S. Senate candidate refused to acknowledge that there might be difficulty with Joe Biden serving another 4 years? They asked questions like, do you believe Joe Biden is the strongest candidate for the Democrats to, in fact, field? Those polls all came back. And as time went on, it appeared that the circle around Joe Biden got closer and closer. And then it came time for the leaders of those groups, Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, to take data to the president and say, this is what we're facing. This is really a problem. Not that anyone, I think, took joy in that. Not that anyone is trying to push Joe Biden off a cliff. I think everyone is feeling a lot of mixed emotions about this. Everyone. Because there's this thing looming, and we watched it last night, that people who, 10 minutes ago were calling Donald Trump Hitler and unhinged are now going, rah, rah, it'd be great. So it is something that I think when they tried to move up the roll call, I think that, frankly, turned a lot of people that were sympathetic to where Joe Biden was to being angry and mad. That not only were they not listening to the concerns of the other elected people in his party, but that they were hell-bent on going forward even more quickly than they needed to try to slam the door on honest concerns of a whole lot of, and these aren't elite voters out there, guys. I can just tell you from my time over the last week, most people who come up to me that are folks like, my plumber who called me. Yeah. These are people that are really worried about Donald Trump being president.
Deeply worried, Mike. But it did seem like, to Claire's point, that the Biden team had a window here. That after the debate, we give you a chance, prove us wrong. Show us that you can still do this. And he's been out there. He's had some good performances. He's had some decent interviews. He got through the press conference just fine. But it almost seemed like the performance ended up not mattering because the perception had taken hold, that he no longer could do it. And the data backs that up, the fundraising backs that up. And it seems that these Democrats who really like Joe Biden, who are really deeply grateful to him for his service, who think he's been a very good president, but they no longer think he's a good presidential candidate. And nothing that has happened, despite Biden and his team's best efforts, has changed their mind.
Jonathan, age historically has gone undefeated. There's nothing you can do about it. You get old, you get old. And there are certain elements of getting older that affect you physically and sometimes mentally. The problem here is the confusion about who Joe Biden is today. Joe Biden remains today the decent, generous, honorable human being that he has always been all of his life. And to read the reports, as Claire was just indicating, of unnamed members of Congress and unnamed members of the Senate who are thinking of their down ballot success this fall, they're thinking about their own jobs. Everybody understands that. But to be told that they're bitter about Joe Biden or disappointed in Joe Biden is really, really sad. Because the man has given his best to the country.
Yes.
He has had a wonderful 4-year administration with more success that I would argue than Barack Obama had in his administration. He has changed the country. And Joe and Mika, I don't know about you. I do know about you, actually. But the sadness of this is personal for me, and I think for people who know Joe Biden. You don't want to see him pushed out. You don't want to see him hurt or humiliated. You want to see him thrive, to be a success, whether he walks away from the nomination or sticks it out for the nomination. You want to see him succeed.
Well, we do. We have known him for a long time. Mika and her family, extraordinarily close to the Bidens, have always felt a connection. The first Brzezinski Award named in your father's memory went to Joe Biden for good damn reason. And you are right. Joe Biden did more as far as bipartisan legislation than any president this century. NATO expanded what he's done in Asia to strengthen our position in Asia around China. Also unprecedented. Everybody's been talking about a pivot to Asia for years. Joe Biden finally did it. And these are the things that Donald Trump's talking about taking apart, whether it's NATO, whether it's Taiwan, you can go down the list. And so, yeah, Joe Biden has been, at least by our count, Joe Biden's been an extremely successful president. I will say, though, when you're told by members of Congress that they're losing, they're going to lose the House and the Senate if he stays on the ticket, when you're told by members of Congress who have seen the polls that you're losing swing states and that your numbers are going down in swing states, and states like Virginia, New Hampshire, New Mexico, Minnesota are now in play. And when your top fundraiser over the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years is telling you the money's gone, the donors have all gone away, you know, it's really incumbent on people that are around Joe Biden to step up at this point and help the president and help the man they love and do the right thing. This is not going to end well if it continues to drag out. Look at the events of yesterday, the events of the last 3 weeks, and at some point, you know, I can tell you, Mike, the anger that I hear is not at Joe Biden. The anger I hear are at the people that are keeping him in a bubble.
Or who have their own interests.
Or who may have their own interests, some financial, in keeping him in the race. That is the real anger. And let me tell you, that's not just the anger from inside Congress. That is anger from inside his own political camp. And it is widespread. It is widespread. Joe Biden deserves better. He deserves better than he is getting from those closest to him.
Meanwhile, Republicans are feeling extremely confident about Donald Trump's prospects to win the presidency again. Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio introduced himself to a national audience last night at the Republican National Convention, accepting the nomination for vice president. The 39-year-old shared stories of his turbulent upbringing, which was chronicled in his best-selling memoir, Hillbilly Elegy. His speech had a populist tone, casting himself as a fighter for the working class.
The venture capitalist, huh?
President Trump represents America's last best hope to restore what, if lost, may never be found again. A country where a working-class boy born far from the halls of power can stand on this stage as the next vice president of the United States of America. Joe Biden has been a politician in Washington for longer than I've been alive, 39 years old. Kamala Harris is not much further behind. For half a century, he's been the champion of every major policy initiative to make America weaker and poorer. We have a big tent in this party on everything from national security to economic policy. But my message to you, my fellow Republicans, is we love this country and we are united to win. My message to my fellow Americans, those watching from across the country, is shouldn't we be governed by a party that is unafraid to debate ideas and come to the best solution? That's the Republican Party of the next 4 years, united in our love for this country and committed to free speech and the open exchange of ideas.
You know, it's very interesting, Jonathan Lemire. I mean, I'm finding that Ivy League elite schools, whether it's Yale.
It's true, though.
So you went to Columbia. But whether it's Yale or Harvard or Princeton or these elite institutions that would not even allow me to buy a T-shirt from their campus stores, these elite institutions are producing some of the fiercest populists in America. And I mean, this populist shtick that he's doing, I love the split screens of him in his little tech vest. You know, I love San Francisco. San Francisco is great. I love it. I love San Francisco. And you know, I love San Francisco so much. Folks. And I love the elites out here. They're so smart. And yeah. So here we are. Josh Hawley, he is a fierce populist. Stanford, Yale. Elise, Harvard. Ted, Harvard. Princeton. I mean, again, these are places, you know, they put APBs out. The Southern State School guy's coming. Lock up the campus store. No T-shirts for Joe.
You get to wear a couple of T-shirts from Ivy League.
Yeah, Alabama. No. Alabama, the Harvard of the South. Damn straight, sister.
Yeah, roll tide there, Joe. Roll tide.
They can wear a Dartmouth T-shirt.
I also have an old Miss T-shirt that I'm allowed to wear. I love Ole Miss, too. But anyway, this whole populist thing is crazy. And this whole we love America, nobody else loves. How do you love America if you're always saying that it's terrible? How do you love America when you deny that we have the strongest economy in the world? How do you love America when you deny that we still have the greatest entrepreneurial engine in the world? How do you love America when you continue to tear down the strength of America's military, when you call them weak and woke, when in fact they're stronger relative to the rest of the world than any time since 1945? How do you love America when you keep talking about how terrible America is? That is the great enduring mystery I would love answered, and that is a great enduring mystery that I wish Democrats would actually ask Republican candidates.
I think for J.D. Vance, his effort to sort of symbolize his transformation from venture capitalist to this version of himself was when he grew the beard. Like those old shots, he had no beard back then. Now he has the beard, and that's trying to symbolize his new political viewpoint. But you make a good point about this dark vision of America that we've heard from Republicans, when all the data doesn't really back that up. Yet we know there is sort of a post-COVID malaise here in the United States, other countries too. Inflation now cooling, but been too high. But by the numbers, America is as prosperous and successful as it's ever been in a lot of metrics. But yet, and that stands in stark contrast to the vision being painted, not just by Vance, but most notably Donald Trump. And that's why I do think maybe he'll stick to a script tonight and preach unity. We all know that won't last. His Truth Social suggests otherwise, that he will indeed go back to depicting America as apocalyptic. Thinking that resonates with his voters. We'll see if it does for the rest of the electorate. Speaking of Trump, he will headline tonight in Milwaukee. And joining us now from the site of the RNC there in Wisconsin, national political correspondent for Politico, Meredith McGraw. She is the author of the upcoming book, Trump in Exile. And Meredith, you have reporting on how former President Trump and Senator J.D. Vance's relationship went from sour to now partners sharing the ticket together. Tell us about that.
Well, let's go back to 2016 when J.D. Vance wrote Hillbilly Elegy. That really served as a kind of guide to the white working class aggrieved voters that Donald Trump appealed to, and really helped to translate to a lot of people the political base that Donald Trump was tapping into. But back then, J.D. Vance wasn't so much a fan of Donald Trump. He had called him a liar, and he was one of those faces of the Never Trump movement. But flash forward to the 2022 midterm elections, and J.D. Vance made appeals to Donald Trump. He ran for Senate in Ohio. It was a crowded primary field. And he was able to win Donald Trump over for a few reasons. One, he directly took on those criticisms he once had of Donald Trump. But he also had some really powerful allies behind him, people like Donald Trump Jr. and Peter Thiel, who made appeals to Trump on his behalf. And I had some reporting in my book about some of the encounters that Trump and Vance had, whether it was at his golf course in Palm Beach, or it was, other instances where Trump thought that Vance was his guy and ultimately endorsed him. But it really is a remarkable arc for J.D. Vance to go from once a liberal darling to now the vice presidential nominee for Donald Trump, and somebody who is really seen as the MAGA heir apparent now.
Meredith, so many different reasons have been cited as the reason why Donald Trump decided to go with J.D. Vance, that he was a true populist, he liked his foreign policy, he liked his defenses on television. But then there's probably the most attractive reason of all. J.D. Vance recanted and surrendered, in a sense, to Donald Trump. What do you think is the reason that Trump, at the end of the day, decided to go with him?
Well, I think Trump has always loved to win over his former critics. We've seen that time and time again with people in the Republican Party who once denounced him and now have become some of his biggest cheerleaders. But I think with this pick, it really came down to a few things. And one, I think they have a strong personal rapport. And I think Donald Trump was looking at this moment, especially just in what's transpired in the past few weeks, and is looking for somebody who is going to push his MAGA movement for the decades to come. And J.D. Vance is incredibly young. He's 39 years old. He's turning 40 in just a few weeks. And at a moment where the conversation, the national conversation, swirls so much about age, questions of age, I do think that was a factor in it, too. And then going back, of course, to some of the people who have been supportive of J.D. Vance. Donald Trump Jr., Trump's son, was incredibly supportive, as were other people like Tucker Carlson and others who played a role in helping Vance get his endorsement back in 2022.
National political correspondent for Politico, Meredith McGraw. Thank you very much. Meredith's new book, Trump in Exile, is set to be released on August 6th. And Jonathan Lemire, you mentioned Vance's beard. And as the New York Times took a deep dive into that aspect of the Vance candidacy, as the Times notes, the Ohio Republican is the first major party nominee with facial hair in 75 years. The last bearded man elected president was Benjamin Harrison back in 1888. The last president with any facial hair whatsoever was William Howard Taft, elected in 1908. The last vice president with a mustache was Charles Curtis, who served alongside Herbert Hoover. And the last major party candidate to try to break that clean-shaven streak was Thomas E. Dewey, who had a dapper little caterpillar on his upper lip and ran unsuccessfully for the highest office in 1944 and 48. And as the Times notes, these days, facial hair is often seen as suspicious, particularly for someone seeking office. Quote, it didn't help that politicians lost their races and appeared to be experiencing something of a long, dark night of the soul, sometimes expressed by crises, by disappearing and then reappearing with beards. And we have one more. honorable beard mention. I liked it, Richard. I liked it.
It may
was
come back,
okay.
Mika. It may come back.
No, I like your face. Okay.
Richard,
Jonathan Lemire.
very, very handsome either way, Richard.
Thank you, Jonathan.
I will note that there was some reporting about J.D. Vance's beard suggesting that actually Harry S. Truman had a beard, but they showed a picture. He was like a light goatee. It's like he just didn't shave for a weekend. That's all it was. So we're not going to go there.
He was busy.
The Yankees.
No, and we should note J.D. couldn't play for the Yankees, but we should note, Mika, there was some reporting that Donald Trump initially was very leery of the beard. He doesn't like beards, doesn't like facial hair. We know he's so desperate for people to look the part, but he was convinced to look the other way here, and even once compared J.D. Vance's beard to one sported by, in his words, a young Abraham Lincoln. So, Haas, we have that to aspire to for the next time you go for it. Look at there. Look, now, we will say, look, 19th century presidents had the best style, and Mike Barnacle there and the mutton chops. Let's do that.
I'd take some of the hair, but I wouldn't put it on top of my head.
Spectacular.
Okay.
Resemblance uncanny.
Richard Haas. Thank you, Richard, very much. And still ahead on Morning Joe, one of our next guests says, one generation of Americans has had a stranglehold on the White House and won't let go. We'll talk about the impact of baby boomers on U.S. politics. That's next on Morning Joe. We will be right back.
The absurd cost of housing is the result of so many failures, and it reveals so much about what's broken in Washington. I can tell you exactly how it happened. Wall Street barons crashed the economy, and American builders went out of business. As tradesmen scrambled for jobs, houses stopped being built. The lack of good jobs, of course, led to stagnant wages. And then the Democrats flooded this country with millions of illegal aliens. So citizens had to compete with people who shouldn't even be here for precious housing. Joe Biden's inflation crisis, my friends, is really an affordability crisis. And many of the people that I grew up with can't afford to pay more for groceries, more for gas, more for rent, and that's exactly what Joe Biden's economy has given them. President Trump's vision is so simple and yet so powerful. We're done, ladies and gentlemen, catering to Wall Street. We'll commit to the working man.
That is fascinating. He blamed the housing crisis on illegal immigrants. Also, later in the speech, I don't know, for those of you who didn't see it, I'll just give you the summary. He also blamed the Detroit Lions' second half collapse against the San Francisco 49ers in the NFC Championship game on illegal immigrants as well. And finally, he blamed the subpar Star-Spangled Banner at the Home Run Derby a few nights ago, also on illegal immigrants. We're going to be fact-checking all of those issues, especially the Lions' second half collapse. That was heartbreaking, still heartbreaking me.
Joining us now live from the RNC in Milwaukee is NBC News senior business analyst and host of the 11th Hour, Stephanie Ruhle. Also with us, co-anchor of CNBC's Squawk Box and a columnist for the New York Times, Andrew Ross Sorkin.
So, Stephanie, we could quibble over the housing crisis and illegal immigrants, the Detroit Lions, Star-Spangled Banner going horribly wrong the other night. But I think really the bigger question here is raised by the Wall Street Journal editorial page this morning when they talk about J.D. Vance, Donald Trump, sort of this protectionism and what it means not only economically, but also their America First policy, what it means internationally. And the Wall Street Journal editorial page has been concerned for some time over Donald Trump's protectionist trade policies. What did you hear last night from J.D. Vance? What do you expect to hear tonight from Donald Trump that will either allay the fears of free traders and capitalists, or what do you think will make them even more fearful?
Well, it's not just what they say, Joe. The issue is what they do. You can start with the housing crisis, right? And J.D. Vance up there talking about what Wall Street robber barons did and how they hurt the country and caused that housing bubble to burst and people losing their homes and losing their businesses. But there's no connection to Donald Trump's policies because it was Wall Street predatory lending. But what happened when Donald Trump became president? He wanted to wipe out the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. He's all about loving payday lending. Steve Mnuchin, his Treasury Secretary, became supremely wealthy because he profited off that bubble bursting. Yesterday, my flight out here, I took a commercial Delta flight, and I sat next to a hedge fund manager named John Paulson, who raised $45 million for Donald Trump back in April. Do you know why he's so rich? Because he shorted subprime. So the issue that blew my mind last night is that J.D. Vance stood on that stage and he could have talked about things that he believes in, like a national abortion ban. He believes in it, that he thinks gutting Medicare and Social Security, that's what we need to do to get back to financial sanity. He's all about Project 2025. He could have talked about those things, but he didn't. He talked about things that were wholly untrue, like how Donald Trump has, what he's done for wages, how he is going to bring jobs back, how Joe Biden is buying energy from other places. Under Joe Biden, we're producing more oil than any president ever. So my head scratcher goes back to what you all were talking about in the last segment with Jeff. How on earth is this rhetoric matching the policies they put forward? It's simply not.
So, Andrew, it's been well discussed, J.D. Vance's transformation from Silicon Valley Wall Street guy to this populist. Give us your analysis of how he's trying to pull it off on this public stage last night, which for much of the country, yeah, maybe they knew him from his book, but this was really their first look at J.D. Vance, the man. What was your read?
Look, my read was to ask more questions than actually have any real answers. I think that especially among the world of folks in business who are following all of this, they're saying to themselves, there is a remarkable disconnect between former President Trump and J.D. Vance's view of the world as it relates to so many of these business issues. And which one is going to ultimately win? Is this window dressing when you hear J.D. Vance talk about, is this a sop effectively to the middle class, which is something that Donald Trump has historically not focused on? In this Bloomberg Business Report this week, Trump says that he's going to take the corporate tax rate down to 15%. That would seem at odds, if you will, from a J.D. Vance view of the world. There has been an expectation that, the regulatory regime, which President Trump has castigated over the years, if you listen to J.D. Vance, he would tell you that, he likes Lina Khan. So which is it? And I think that's a little bit of the question this morning. Which is it? If Donald Trump is the president, is he actually listening to J.D. Vance, or is J.D. Vance window dressing for some of the less comfortable things that Trump may be supporting?
Stephanie, J.D. Vance and Trump both support a weaker American dollar. Can you talk about what a fundamental shift that would be in the American and world economy if they were to weaken the American dollar as the world's currency?
Okay, I'm going to give one example or one issue where this really matters, and then it connects to who J.D. Vance's biggest backers are, and now Donald Trump's. Many people are wondering, why are all these tech bros? Why do you have Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, right? Certainly they're not pro-union guys. Why are they backing a J.D. Vance and a Donald Trump? Well, one of the main reasons is cryptocurrencies, right? If suddenly the U.S. dollar, if it is no longer the strongest in the world, people are going to care more about crypto. They're going to care more about Bitcoin. What they would love to see is the SEC revamped, regulation around cryptocurrency changing. That would make this universe, the tech universe, backing J.D. Vance and Donald Trump even more wealthy. And so that's something we should all be, and I'm not saying alarmed in a bad way, but just pay attention to. Suddenly these guys who are libertarians who are backing someone like a J.D. Vance, this doesn't really make sense. Well, it is because they want to go from having ultimate wealth to ultimate power. And deregulation is one of the great ways they're going to do that. And a J.D. Vance might help them.
and her electrifying floor routine set to Taylor Swift's hit song Ready for It at the U.S. Olympic trials late last month. The 27-year-old will be the oldest female American gymnast to compete at the Olympics in 72 years. But that is not the only significant milestone we'll see for women at the Paris Games. For the first time, the Summer Olympics, which start next week, will have gender parity. Half of the over 10,000 athletes participating will be women. To tell us more about the slow and steady build of female participation at the Olympics and why it matters is MSNBC contributor Huma Abedin. She's also vice chair of the Forbes and Know Your Value 3050 Summit and editor of Forbes Women. Maggie McGrath joined the teams back together, of course. Maggie, Forbes Women has taken a deep dive into the numbers of women athletes participating in the Games since 1900. When Paris first hosted the Games, and what did you all find?
Well, Mika, I'm so glad you started with those 1900 Paris Games because those were the first Olympic Games to include any female athletes. That year, there were 22 women competing out of 997. They competed in just 5 events. And over the years, as the IOC has added more women's events, we have seen female participation increasing. And in a full circle moment this year, 124 years later, we will have full numeric parity in Paris for the first time ever. 5,000 athletes identify as female out of the roughly 10,000 total Olympians. Now, I want to point out these numbers are just the start of the story here. The IOC is signaling its commitment to gender equality in a number of other ways. There will be equal coverage of men's and women's events during prime time. The IOC has asked all participating nations during the opening ceremonies to bring a female and male flag bearer. And then in my favorite fact, you know, the Olympics normally conclude with the men's marathon, but this year the women's marathon will be the grand finale. It's going to be such a good race. I love watching.
So, Huma, why has the landscape for women athletes changed so much? And obviously, I mean, we know some of the answer to this next questions, but why is it so important?
You know, Mika, it's a combination of 3 things: policy, access, and inspiration. It's not like girls have not aspired to be amazing athletes for centuries. I remember when I was 9 years old and watching the 1984 Olympics and watching Mary Lou Retton on that gymnastics mat and being so inspired and saying, that's what I want to grow up and be. But it wasn't until the passage, and the 3 of us talk about this all the time, the passage of Title IX in this country, that policy, that legislation that required equal opportunity to sports for girls and boys, which led to a 5-fold increase in girls participating in school sports. And since then, this explosion of female athletes on all levels is something to inspire us, along with Billie Jean King, one of our honorees. Yes. And leading to a generation of athletes of in all fields. So to see that you have the IOC requiring that the flag bearers at the opening ceremonies be 1 man and 1 woman. These are small things, but they're not. They're huge. I can see it. That's representation. That's possible for me. The Mongolian team in particular, I think, has already won the award in the best dressed athletes. It's leading to the largest record-breaking viewership this year, and I cannot wait till it starts.
So, Maggie, let's talk about the female star power on Team USA. So how many athletes do we have headed to the Games, and how have American women fared versus men in terms of winning medals?
Oh, I love this question, Mika. So we have 592 total athletes heading to Paris this year on Team USA. 314 of those athletes are women, 53%. And in terms of their odds of success, it is quite good if recent history is any indication. Over the last 15 years, the Team USA's female athletes have outmedaled the male athletes, despite competing in fewer events. In 2020, American women won 66 medals, nearly 60% of the team's total haul. And then if the U.S. women had been their own sovereign nation in 2020, they would have come in 4th overall in the medal count behind the U.S., China, and Russia. And I just want to underscore what Huma said. All of these statistics are fun to brag about or boast about, but women's success is driving interest in women's sports, which is driving a tremendous amount of investment and money.
Exactly. We had Katie Ledecky on yesterday, who's expected to clean up. She was amazing. I love her positivity and her confidence. Huma, what storylines and women athletes will you have your eye on?
There are 4. Coco Gauff, she had COVID in 2020, couldn't compete. She's our U.S. Open champion. Can't wait to see what she does. Simone Biles, I mean, talk about a GOAT. She left in the midst of the 2020 Olympics, is now coming back. And Katie Ledecky, we have a saying in our household, when you do something extraordinary, it goes like this: what the hecky, Katie Ledecky. Because not only does she have the skill, but she has versatility, she has staying power. Cannot wait to see what she does.
I love it. What the hecky.
And the 4th is the unknown. The unknown. Who's the star that comes out? Yeah.
Exactly. The breakout star, Huma Abedin, Maggie McGrath, thank you both very much. Look forward to talking about 50 over 50 with you. It's coming up. The opening ceremony, though, for the Paris Olympic Games is next Friday, July 26th. Coverage begins at 7:30 Eastern on NBC and streaming on Peacock.
It's Tyler Owens. Calls himself a tornado wrangler. If you feel it, chase it! I said if you feel it, chase it! All right, here we go. Oh, she's perfect!
She's gorgeous!
You thought you could destroy a tornado.
We never had a chance.
You want one? You don't face your fears. You ride them.
Wow. That was a look at a new, highly anticipated summer blockbuster, Twisters. The movie offers a fresh take on the 1996 hit Twister, but with a new generation of storm chasers in the infamous Tornado Alley who are working to increase their understanding about tornadoes as they risk their lives to save others. And joining us now, the movie's co-stars Glenn Powell, Daisy Edgar Jones, Anthony Ramos, along with Academy Award-nominated director Lee Isaac Chung.
Thank you guys so much for being with us. Glenn.
Feels like our politics right now.
It is. Yeah, Twisters. Not just one twist. All over the place.
Yeah.
So, Glenn, I understand that like you were a massive fan of the 96 original. And as a kid, you and your cousins would watch it over and over again. I'm wondering, first of all, how did that impact your decision to do the film? And secondly, how did it shape the character? How did it shape how you approached the whole project?
I mean, I think, Twister, the original, is just such a iconic movie. Growing up in Texas, you know, it's Tornado Alley. Obviously, it's, you know, tornadoes are sort of the monster in your backyard. You did tornado drills in school. And yeah, my cousins and I think we watched that VHS till it broke, and then it became the first DVD ever. And, you know, it was really, for me, it represented the ultimate summer blockbuster. You know, one of those movies that I always wanted to make. And thank God, career-wise, right now, I'm getting to occupy worlds like Twister that I've always wanted to occupy. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. And Daisy, so Glenn says you pretty much says you've got a future as a meteorologist because you were the most well-studied when it comes to weather, and you even went to a weather boot camp. Tell us about that, and again how it helped you understand what you were doing.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm from London, so I play someone from Oklahoma who grew up chasing storms. So I really was like, gosh, I need to do my research. So we were so lucky because we filmed in Oklahoma. We got to actually meet a lot of meteorologists. We went to the National Weather Center. We had a storm lesson induction. The whole cast went, and I was like, right, I'm going to be top of the class. So I did a lot of research. But yes, I'm not sure. I think I should stick to my day job, but maybe there's a future for me there.
I wouldn't think a lot of twisters in London. Let's say in Texas or where I grew up in Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, where it's just regular occurrence.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Let's take a look at a clip from the film where all three of your characters are together as you chase down a twister as it forms.
What do you see?
Already has a nice structure. Moisture levels are just right and lots of cape.
What else are you seeing?
Flow is clean, pulling tons of warm, moist air from the south.
And when that warm air and moisture busts through the cap, it explodes in the atmosphere, creating an anvil. The vertical wind shear begins to rotate the updraft, forming a mesocyclone.
And here's the mystery.
We don't know how a tornado forms. We see the hook on the radar, but
What are all the invisible factors coming together? Every little detail that
has to be perfect. And it's a mix of what we know and everything we can't understand. It's part science, part religion. Come on, baby. Come on. Come on, please. Come on. Please. Come on.
There it is.
Yeah, baby! Here we go.
You see that? That's a tornado right there, baby. Get some photos of that, man.
Birth of a tornado, nature's masterpiece.
I'm just going to put it out there. It seems like a really bad idea. Anthony, you filmed this in the summer. It's Oklahoma. There were tornadoes. Yeah. Did you see any? What was that experience like?
I didn't see any tornadoes. Isaac did, but I didn't. But we had some scares. I mean, like the first night I had dinner with Isaac, I was in Oklahoma, and I had just flown in, and we were having dinner, and all of a sudden I see the windows kind of rattling in the hotel, and then the doors are kind of doing one of these, opening and closing. And I look at the waiter, and I'm like, "Hey, like, are we good?" Like, I was like, "Are we safe?" And the waiter's like, "Yeah, no, we're used to this." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Like, all right, then I'll have sparkling water." Then I'm like, "I'm chilling," you know, like it's whatever. But yeah.
So Isaac, you have a personal connection growing up around tornadoes. So tell us a little bit about that, but also what drew you to this project, which is very different than some of your other films.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I grew up in Arkansas. Grew up around Tornado Alley. And when the first Twister came out, that just really felt like a film that was made for all of us back home. So I didn't even know till I got to college how big Twister was. Like I just felt like it was a special film for us, my family, my friends. This film was really a chance for me to go back home and make another film. And also to make an action movie. I've been dreaming and dying to have a chance of doing that. And not many people get that chance. So just to be able to have that chance was also something I couldn't say no to.
Man, that is so cool. So, Glenn,
Wow.
I got to ask you, Glenn, so let's see. Top Gun, Twisters. What's next, dude? A remake of Armageddon? Come on. You're doing all the huge ones, aren't you?
As a huge fan of Armageddon, man, don't tempt me. No, I mean, that's the really amazing privilege about Twisters is like, I think, you know, again, career-wise, like where we all are, like to reoccupy those boots, that truck, you know, bunch of cowboy scientists chasing the wind. There's just no better way to go to work. So, you know, that's the dream of Hollywood. When you get to do it right, you get to kind of return to being a kid.
Yeah, and Daisy, I love seeing this. I love seeing a big movie like this because, you know, last summer we, of course, had Oppenheimer and Barbie.
Right.
People said, where are the big summer blockbusters this year to get people back in the theaters? Well,
Yeah, I mean,
this is it.
Right?
This is the one. I mean, it really feels like a film to be shared, a film to be enjoyed in the big screen, you know. I think it's as close to chasing as you can get without getting rained on.
Unless you see it in 40X.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Anthony, tell us a little bit about the way that this movie tried to pay homage to the original.
I mean, you know, we had these little nuggets from the original, like the Dorothy.
you know, and in the beginning, you know, Daisy's character Kate is like, we're all chasing in college, and we're trying to get Dorothy to work, and you know, and we had James Paxton in the movie, Bill's son, which was cool. He did a cameo, and you know, and again, you know, we shot in Oklahoma. You know, I think it's, you know, we had all these kind of homages to the first film. Sadly, I do miss I miss the cow. You know, you know, I do, but you know, it's you know, I think that Isaac did an amazing job of taking the inspiration from the original film and just taking it to another level.
And Isaac, lastly, and briefly, just how did that happen? You sort of nod to the original, but also make it your own.
Yeah, I mean, we all loved that original film, so it seemed like everybody was trying to bring stuff into this one, including the cow. That was a constant thing that people were trying to put into this movie. So we're just trying to show love to that first one. But ultimately, I mean, this cast, these are incredible new actors who are up and coming and just doing incredible things. And the story is new. The science experiment is new. And also what ILM can do with these tornadoes. It's the most complex tornadoes we've ever seen in cinemas. So just to be able to do that and make this film completely new to today, that was really exciting.
That's excellent.
That
is so
Watching
awesome.
it's going to be like riding a scary roller coaster.
I can't wait.
Twisters will be in theaters nationwide starting tomorrow. Co-stars Glenn Powell, Daisy Edgar Jones, Anthony Ramos, and director Lee Isaac Chung. Thank you all very much for coming on the show this morning.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.